Greetings, my magnificent ones. Sue Paulson here, your magnificence mentor. It's Friday the 13th, supposedly an unlucky day, but I feel particularly lucky because I get to work with you. Well, last night at our Inner Wisdom Connectors meeting, which is a face-to-face meeting we do here in Edmonton once a month, the topic was exploring what we can learn or take away from near-death experiences. One of the key points that we batted back and forth was all about judgment. Because I recall when I experienced my own trip to the other side, that there was no judgment in the spirit realm. Judgment just didn't exist. Well, we do have it here on planet Earth, and I, like many others, don't believe that it's good to judge. But one of the participants last night, a friend, said, well, I think judgment is really important because it helps us stay safe. And so we decided to have a little more critical think about this particular aspect. So that's what today's session is all about, is about judgment. Does it help or does it harm? Or when does it help and when does it harm? So let's look at the helping part first, because these were things that I hadn't really thought about or considered, but realize that we do it often. So, of course, we're information gathering individuals who want to move towards making some kind of a decision about our day. So do I get up early or do I sleep in? And of course, part of that thing has to do with desire. Personally, I really like to sleep in. However, there are days when it's more important for me to be up early. So I make kind of a judgment call about that and say, even though I'd rather sleep in, it's more important that I make this particular meeting, so I'm going to get up early. So we have this discernment that looks at the contrasts that we're faced with. It could be this or it could be this, and all the shades in between. So how do we make a decision then? Well, back in the pioneer days, as an example, if you were part of a wagon train going trekking west or wherever you were going into the wilderness, there was usually a wagon train leader who would send scouts on ahead to gather information about the best route, the safest route, what was going on. And then based on the information that came back, he would judge what the best way forward was. So, for example, if they came to a river and the water's rushing along and flowing the banks, then he has to make a judgment call about whether or not it's safe to cross the river or where in the river it's safe to cross. Because, of course, he has the well-being of all these people to look after. So that's one of the ways that we work with judgment that can have a very positive outcome. That's why people do experiments all the time to come to some conclusions about, for example, whether a product is safe or not. And as kids, we are taught from our earliest moments as we're starting to crawl and walk. Our parents are always judging on our behalf whether what we're about to do is safe or not. And so we reach up to touch the hot stove. Whoa, no, don't touch that. They make a judgment, not safe, not safe. So there's a signal. So for our own well-being and the continuation of the species, obviously, we judge all the time on behalf of our own safety. Initially, as I mentioned, those who know better than we do at the time will make that judgment call for us. So if you've been a teenager, of course you have been a teenager, like I have, our parents sometimes said no, when we wanted to engage in a particular activity, or we wanted to go out with a particular group of people, and maybe they knew things that we didn't know and said, no, 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 that's a fast crowd. I don't want you hanging out with them, or I don't want you going out there alone, or whatever. So that, and I can remember making this judgment with my son when he was 16, and he and his buddies like to uh, go out in the evening and wander around, and sometimes later at night. And I made the judgment call, and I said, look, I want you in somewhere by midnight, because after midnight, it's very unpredictable what can happen out on the streets. And so please, I didn't give him a curfew. I just said, be mindful that sometimes really bad things can happen after midnight. And so I made that call, and fortunately, he and his buddies would abide by that, as far as I knew anyway. They might not have all the time, but at least I felt more secure about my son's safety and his friend's safety, because I had given that directive. Did I know for sure? Well, no, not really, but it was a judgment call I made that gave me some peace of mind in that regard, that I was doing the best I could to ensure the safety of my loved ones. So we make these judgments all the time. You're faced with your first job, and you don't know if this is the best job for you, but based on other places you've applied, what people have told you about this company, the information you've gathered through it all, then you make a call and say, okay, I'm going to, I judge this to be the best thing for me at this point in time. And then we go ahead and say, yeah, thanks for picking me, and we start. Now, we may find 6, 8 months, a year into the job that we get, no, this isn't really for me. But it's okay, because you've gained a lot of things along the way. And then guess what? You get to pick again. If you really dislike it, then you get to pick again. So every facet of our lives really is based on some kind of judgment. Uh, Um, it can relate a lot to our senses, our sense of taste, our sense of touch, our what we hear. And so my taste in music is based on what feels good to me when I listen to it, what viscerally, as well as the sound in my ears, and the emotions that it evokes. And so I'll say yes, this, not that. I really like this, I really don't like that. So that's helpful. That helps us orchestrate our lives. It helps us move through our days in a much easier fashion. And all of it's based really on the information that we take in. That also can include, and whether we're aware of it or not, it includes our, you could call them your spidey senses, your intuition, your gut feeling. It includes all of that. And if you've ever had a sense of foreboding about getting in the car with someone. I was talking with a friend last night, and back in the day of my youth, I would pick up hitchhikers on the side of the road, but I always judged how I felt as I was going by them. So it was almost as if I tapped into my internal vibration in connection to them. And if I felt good, if it felt, yeah, I think they're harmless, I think it would be okay to pick them up, then I would ease over to the shoulder and give them a ride. If I didn't feel good, I'd just drive on by. It never let me down. My judgment on that basis was always sound. I confess throughout my life, there's probably times when I didn't judge that well, and I think my guardian angels were watching over me, because they would pull me out of a situation that could have gone not so good. So it's a useful tool. Judgment is a useful tool. Now, let's talk about how it can harm, though, and we uh, why we get mired in the negativity of it. So, if judgment is used to label in the sense of, excuse me, not so much, well, yeah, in the sense of right or wrong, good or bad. Something could be right for you and something could be wrong for you. But if we just blanket label it, oh, that's wrong. So anybody who does that is wrong. And we label that without thinking it through. So I think automatic judgment that's based on assumptions, that's based on preconceived notions, that's based on old stories that we've heard from someone else out of the past that we have never questioned or verified or thought about. All of that can lead to some kind of harm, either harm for ourselves, harm for other people, or collectively harm for all of us. So how many times do people get into conflict because nobody thought to ask the questions that needed to be asked in order to resolve it? They just made assumptions based on rumor, on hearsay, on evidence that couldn't be substantiated, and then the rumor mill caught it, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, people are making judgments based on a lie, based on things that aren't true whatsoever. This misinformation, we've seen this happen on our social media lots, where someone takes something out of context, doctors a little piece of information, and then people judge based on that without saying, well, is there something more behind that? Like, what's really going on here? It seems to me as if the lack of critical thinking about what is in front of us can lead to a great deal of harm, that it causes us to question this. So I was giving an example last night that it was such a simple thing. I was driving my car and ready to turn left when the light turned green. There was nobody coming towards me. There was a lane beside me where people were either meant to go straight through or turn right. And all of a sudden, the little car beside me darted in front of me when the light changed green and turned left. And I'm going, what? And it kind of shocked me. And I watched this driver as I turned left after them. Fortunately, I wasn't that quick on the gas pedal, so we didn't have a crash. And I'm watching this driver be a little bit erratic. And out of the blue into my head came this phrase, woman driver. And I had to startle and I thought, what? Where did that come from? And, and it was so interesting that there was almost a memory of my dad's voice and his brothers' voices, my uncles, and their disdain for women drivers. And I hadn't even known that that was there. So I'm judging this driver as first of all, a bad driver because of the behavior on the roads. And secondly, applying a gender when I didn't even know, I didn't even see who was driving and I couldn't tell. So of course, then my curiosity got up and I decided to get closer. So I sped up and then was neck and neck so I could see the driver, not a woman. In fact, it was a young man. And I'm going, oh, interesting. And so it was such a fascinating instant display of this judgment And I thought I had long since learned to not do that. But there it was, boom. And I'm going, well now. And so then, of course, I'm mentally apologizing to all women who drive and um and thinking, well, if this is a young driver, it obviously looked young, well, then maybe they haven't had their license that long. And I know I've been in a position on the road where I wasn't thinking about what I was doing, and all of a sudden I'm in the wrong lane, and then I do something that is probably ill-advised, and the poor people behind me are going, oh. So so I'm not blameless. So all these thoughts were rolling around in my head to emphasize how quickly we can get into judgment, and it's just the snap of a fingers and we're there. If we don't examine it, if we don't have a second breath and say, is that really true? Or where did, wow, where did that come from? That's not how I normally think. Then it can cause harm because of what happens after that. So prejudice comes from prejudging, from a time when we take information from whatever we've had before, and often it's what people told us, their own experience, but we weren't there. Any prejudices they have from out of the past, and we adopt it often without even thinking about it, without even questioning it. Well, it does a lot of harm in our society because of dividing us, because of the divisiveness that we see. And you know as well as I do that there's plenty of divisiveness out there. We have wars going on where one side wants it this way and the other side wants it this way, and they're mad enough that they're fighting about it. And of course, each side believes they are absolutely right and the other side is absolutely wrong. Well, I think our world is a little too complex to deal in absolutes. So there are some areas of merit on both sides. And there are also some areas where there's harm being caused on both sides based on what's being thought about politically. Well, I don't have to say much more about that. There's this side and this side, and it doesn't feel as if there's a whole lot in between. We get into this either or mentality. Either you're with me or you're against me. Well, what if I'm partly with you about these points, but then I have my own belief about these points? And what if we combine those points to come up with something even better? So is it really an either or could it be an and? So years ago I live in Canada, so the politics are slightly different, but we still have our left side and our right side. And someone accused me one time of being, when I was a little more politically involved than I am today, accused me of being a quotes liberal conservative. And I didn't take offense because I said that's exactly right. Because I believe that it's important to be fiscally responsible, to be good stewards of our tax dollars and how we want to spend money for the good of society. And I believe it's also important that we look after our citizens, particularly the citizens who are in a very vulnerable place and have few resources to deal with life the way the rest of us might. And so to me, it wasn't I'm either on this side or I'm on this side. It was, well, surely there's a meeting in the middle somewhere that could be helpful. So that's the issues that I see in front of us when we make these judgments based on either not enough information or based on flat out wrong information. What is actually the truth in this context? it's important, I think, that we stop and think about how we judge, who we judge, and what the consequences of that are. Because I know in my gut that if I misjudge someone, so I make a snap judgment and think, well, they're bad or they're wrong or whatever, and then I have new information after that, I don't feel very good about having made that snap judgment. And I'm sure they didn't feel very good either, especially if I told them how I felt about that in that context. So it causes huge strife amongst individuals and obviously amongst the whole of society when we jump too quickly to some conclusion based on rumor or misinformation or whatever. So can judgment help us? Absolutely. Can judgment harm us? Absolutely. You get to choose, you get to pick. My goal for myself personally these days is to take a little more time to assess. So when someone says this, which is why I appreciated this friend pointing out that judgment could be helpful, because I was kind of coming from the opposite perspective. All judgment is bad. And so listening to him, I'm going, oh, okay, that's an interesting perspective. So I heard it and I took it in, and it generated this little session today. So I'm passing along to you what I learned yesterday and how helpful it was for me, with the confidence that you too are interested in just opening up to more possibilities as we move through to this magnificence that you all are. You can do this. I know you can, because I know how magnificent you are. That's a judgment. I'm judging you magnificent. But I mean, it's based on what I know about you, which I know is magnificent. All right, that's it for today. If you would like more in relation to what I have to say about this and that, with this is part of that number 34, I think, of the Heaven on Earth series, please subscribe to my channel. I don't have a lot of subscribers. I think I have more viewers than subscribers. Well, YouTube likes people to subscribe, and so do I, because then you can get notified of when the next video is and so on. So please subscribe to this channel. The other thing you can, and go through the content. There's plenty of content on there. I have over 200 videos, and so you can pick a topic that you might choose and have fun with it. The other thing that I will mention is that I do have the lab called the Magnificence Lab. You can see our logo just in behind me there. This is for those of you who want to engage in your work in a little deeper way. And I encourage you to check out the Magnificence Lab. So that's magnificencelab.org. There's an invite page there that you can apply to become a member. There's also a workshop page, because I offer a free workshop once a month that engages each of us in a different way. We have a different topic every month in our Pathways to Magnificence series. So if all you need to do is enroll in that. It asks for that you put in your email and your password, and then you can access replays and content there. Oh, that seems like a lot. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your Friday the 13th. I hope it's the luckiest day you've ever experienced. And we'll see you next time.